sorry we're a little bit late. We're still waiting some people testifying in the Senate. We will start our hearings on Senate Bill 292. Now, if our reviser will please revise us.
Good morning, committee. Senate Bill 292 updates statutes related to the Kansas Army and National Guard, provides for the appointment of a state judge advocate, and provides for the adjustment of death and disability benefits. This is almost exactly the same as House Bill 2230 that this committee passed out as amended last session. So I'm just going to go over what's new in the Senate version, and that's only two things. There's a new Section 2, which provides that the benefit amount specifically identified in KSA 48-267, and 48-269, Sections 16 and 17 of the bill, shall be adjusted by the Military Disability Board as defined in KSA 48-261, which is Section 15 of the bill, to commence on July 1st, 2024, and each July 1st thereafter by a percentage equal to the percentage increase from the previous calendar year in the Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers as published by the Bureau of Labor Statistics in the United States Department of Labor. The other changes reflected in the bill is changing from 2023 to 2024 throughout the bill. And I can stand for preliminary questions.
Any questions? Good. Thank you very much. At this time, we'll have our first proponent, Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. It's a pleasure to be able to address this bill, upgrade what needs to be fixed. We're a very viable part of our state preparedness, National Guard, Air, Army. We understand this bill because it's come to us before. You've had a chance to look at some of the things. But in truth, one of the key comments, we need to give back to the commanders the tools that they really need to implement our National Guard forces and to take care of them, whether it's disciplinary issues or when they are hurt. I really, truly enjoyed the letter from our Brigadier General. Terms and positions in our Chapter 48 that date back to the 19th century. Current statute requires the governor to coordinate uniforms and arms with the Secretary of War. Don't think we've had that for a while. Commanding officers are required to report by telegraph. Okay, I don't know if we have any ditty boppers still left in the service. It was an amazing skill. Armories are required to be open to the Grand Army of the Republic, a Civil War veterans organizations, and the Spanish-American War veterans for meetings and events. I'm not too sure, but I think they're all gone now. So those are simple and silly in some ways, but they reflect a real need. One of the issues in this bill that is addressed is monthly benefits. We're asking our National Guard troops to serve in a variety of capacities, called to active duty when they are serving, such as when they were called to Washington, D.C. by our governor, but more likely when they are called for local emergencies, from whether it is fires out on the west plains of Kansas to flooding, circumstances where they are called for emergencies and would report to the local sheriff or mayor. They're placing themselves in harm. We know that they're involved in training and equipment and very clearly could result in accidents or injuries to them, such as a helicopter or a plane crash, God forbid. And now we have a family that is in need of benefits that are fair and equitable for any military veteran. And so you've had a chance to look at all of these, and in a moment that we'll hear from the staff, how could we do anything less for the improvement of our fine forces? Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Are there any questions? Any questions? This time we have one more proponent, Lieutenant Colonel Jacob McElwee.
Start over again. So, good morning, Mr. Chairman, committee members. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Jacob McAlee, and I have the pleasure of serving with and for Brigadier General Venerti, who is the Adjutant General of the state of Kansas. And today we come to provide testimony on Senate Bill 292. I'm not going to be able to do much more than what Representative Johnson already did. But just to sum it up from our perspective, there's two main issues that we're trying to accomplish here with this bill. The first one is we're just trying to clean up some language that has just kind of time has passed it by, and Representative Johnson's already pointed all those out. And the second is the second is the more substantive and probably the more important point is we're trying to make the death benefits that, God forbid, if we ever have to invoke this statute, that they're more in line with today's economy, because it's been multiple decades since any of these benefits have been updated and increased, so they're more in line with the economic times that we live in today. So essentially, that's what we're trying to do. We're asking you to help us protect soldiers a little bit more in the event that they're injured on state active duty, and then just clean up the language in Chapter 48, so it's more up to date. And it just reflects where we're at as a state and where we're at as a armed services. So that's the totality of our testimony, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions that this committee may have.
Any questions? Any questions? Thank you very much, sir. Are there any opponents? Anyone else would like to speak to the bill? All of that will close the hearing on Senate Bill 292. I'm going to call a 5-minute recess and talk to our advisors just briefly. So I'll call a recess for 5 minutes.
Good morning again, committee. Senate Bill 431 would direct the Capital Preservation Committee to approve plans for a permanent memorial honoring the life of Emil Joseph Copon. The bill establishes the Emil Joseph Copon Memorial Fund for the purpose of receiving grants, gifts, and other donations to finance the design and construction of the memorial. No public funds will be expended for this memorial. Senate Bill 431 would become effective on July 1st, 2024, upon publication in the statute book, and this bill passed out of the Senate 40-0. And I can stand for questions.
Any questions? Questions? Thank you very much. Our first proponent will be Mike Kelly.
Good morning, committee. Mike Kelly, Kansas Council of Chapters, Military Officers Association of America. Chaplain Capon, and I guess that's the third pronunciation we've used this morning. Chaplain Capon, no matter how you pronounce his last name, is a moral giant. His work as a chaplain, both in World War II and in the Korean War, is one of the most outstanding stories of military service I've ever heard. His unit in Korea was surrounded by a massive Chinese infantry force. His organization was ordered to hold the line to let the rest of the units retreat. The non-combatants in his unit were ordered to retreat. Chaplain Capon said, "No, I'm going to stay with the wounded soldiers that cannot move." When he did that, he knew he was going to be captured or killed. He stayed with his soldiers. He became a prisoner of war. He spent 7 months in a prisoner of war camp in the frigid climb of North Korea in the winter from November until May. Unfortunately, he became ill and passed away. But we know, and some of the other testimony speaks to this, that every day he was a prisoner of war, he was a beacon of positivity and did everything he could to raise the spirit of his fellow soldiers. And he led them to survive their ordeal as prisoners of war, even though he did not. This is the easiest vote you're going to take when you're a legislator, to vote this bill out. MOA supports this bill 100%. I'm happy to stand for any questions, sir.
Are there any questions? Any questions? Thank you for your testimony.
Yes, sir.
Our next proponent will be Michael J. Grotoff, State Deputy of the Kansas State Council of the Knights of Columbus. Glad you're here, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you this morning. My name is Mike Grotoff. I am the state deputy of the Kansas Knights of Columbus. The Knights of Columbus is a Catholic fraternal service organization inspired by our 4 principles of charity, unity, fraternity, and patriotism. I am proud to represent nearly 39,000 Knights and their families in 280 local councils across the Sunflower State. On behalf of the Knights of Columbus, I enthusiastically support this bill. We believe that adding a memorial to Chaplain Father Emil Capon to our State House demonstrates our commitment to the values of this humble servant. We stand ready to increase awareness of this initiative among our members through our social media platforms and through statewide organizational mailings. And we stand ready to aid in raising funds for this project. The Knights of Columbus has a strong track record of charitable giving. A couple of examples of that: through our annual Tootsie Roll campaign, the Kansas Knights of Columbus has raised hundreds of thousands of dollars in support of Kansas Special Olympics and persons with intellectual disabilities. Since its inception, our emergency disaster aid program has raised over $1.3 million to aid families who have lost their homes to natural disasters, such as fires, floods, and tornadoes. The Knights of Columbus also partners with the Archdiocese of Military Services to help provide funds to educate the future generations of much needed Catholic chaplains in our armed services. These are just a few of the charitable programs the Knights of Columbus support, and we will get behind this project to honor Father Capon with all that we have. Our members have a special affection for Chaplain Capon, and our over 39,000 Knights across the state will embrace this project and work hard for its success. I urge you to pass this bill, recognizing the impact of Chaplain Father Emil Capon that he has had on both our great state of Kansas and on our nation. Thank you again for this opportunity, and I stand for questions.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions? Any questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
At this time, we will hear from Representative Mike Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senate Bill 431 would require the Capital Preservation Committee to approve plans to place a permanent memorial honoring the life of Emil Joseph Capon. Emil Joseph Capon was born in Pilsen, Kansas, and served as a U.S. Army chaplain in World War II and the Korean War, where he became a prisoner of war. He was awarded the Medal of Honor posthumously in 2013 by President Obama. The bill would authorize the Secretary of Administration to receive and expend monies for the purpose of financing the creation and construction of the memorial and to remit all monies received for such purpose to the state treasurer. The bill would establish the Emil Joseph Capon Memorial Fund and authorize the state treasurer to deposit funds received for the purpose of financing the creation and construction of the memorial in the state treasury to the credit of the fund. Expenditures from the fund would be authorized for the creation and construction of the memorial and for other purposes as may be required by the grantor or donor. The bill would prohibit the expenditure of public funds for the creation or construction of the memorial. And then this is a part that I am adding as a chaplain. Military chaplains follow a ministry philosophy called Ministry of Presence. Ministry of Presence means chaplains are assigned to units with the soldiers. Army chaplains deploy with the soldiers. They trod through the same mud and the dirt, ride the same convoys, jump out of the same airplanes, and face death along with the soldiers. Chaplain Capon's ministry was a shining example of ministry of presence. In Korea, as his unit was being overrun by the enemy, Chaplain Capon had the opportunity to evade capture, but chose to stay in order to minister to the wounded and dying. He was captured and became a prisoner of war. In the POW camp, he ministered the spiritual and the physical needs of his fellow soldiers. 7 months later, on May 23rd, 1951, Chaplain Capon died from pneumonia and a blood clot in his leg. He was 35 years old. Chaplain Capon was awarded the Medal of Honor posthumously by President Obama in 2013. Chaplain Capon's life was more than a life of service. We talk about a life of service, but his was more. And it's through his commitment to Christ that his life became not only a life of service, but it was a life of sacrifice, even unto death. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Representative. Are there any questions? Any questions? I have a question, Representative Thompson.
Yes, sir.
How long were you a chaplain?
18 and a half years with the Army. Before that, 8 different hospitals.
But what did you go in as?
I went as a chaplain with the Army.
Okay.
42 when I did that.
Wow. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your testimony. At this time, we'll have a proponent by Representative Hill. If you would like to speak. Caught you off guard there.
Never put a microphone in front of me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I don't really have a prepared testimony, but Pilsen is in my legislative district. And I'll tell you, this is something very integral and important to that community. And the community is a Czech immigrant community. And to this day is primarily Czech ancestry people there. And Father Capon really symbolizes the type of people that live in this farm community. And for those of you that haven't been there, they have an amazing church in Pilsen that's all restored. There's a museum there that is dedicated to Father Capon. And I was just there Sunday. They had a fundraiser to add to that. And then every year there's a pilgrimage that comes from Wichita and comes out to Pilsen, and it retraces. And I apologize, I came in late, but it retraces the route that was taken when Father Capon's remains were brought back from Korea, and were interned. They're actually interned in Wichita, but they were brought out to Pilsen before they were interned in Wichita. And so that is a huge part of the community. It's a huge part of their trust and belief in faith. And I think, you know, whatever we can do here to help honor that is a huge thing. So appreciate the opportunity to talk on it, and we'll have some more personal anecdotes as we go forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? I have a question for Representative Thompson. He was buried in a mass grave, wasn't he? As I was reading.
I can answer that for you. He was not buried in a mass grave. And because I wondered, his remains are about 95% intact. And what happened was that he meant so much to those prisoners there that the detail that was assigned with burying the bodies, because there was numerous bodies all the time. This was pretty deplorable conditions, and he was actually giving up his food to keep other soldiers alive. I don't know if that got brought out, but when he passed, the detail took him to a special place, and they actually buried him in a shelter. There was like a shelter in near the prisoner of war camp, and so they kept track of where that was at. And so back in whatever year it was, they found those remains. There was a local person that said, "Yeah, I think it was this spot here," and they went back to that spot and were able to recover his remains.
Thank you, sir. This time we'll have a WebEx. Do we have Ray Capon, nephew of Father Capon, on? Maybe we do, maybe we don't. Are there any other proponents? I right next. We do have written. Well, we'll go on. Yes, sir. You're Scott Carter. You gave written testimony.
That's correct. Sorry for the miscommunication with the written. Yes, thank you for allowing me to testify. My name is Scott Carter. I am the coordinator for the Father Capon Guild with the Catholic Diocese of Wichita. And on behalf of the Bishop, Carl Kemme, we're proponents of the bill. What I want to share is so many great testimonies already given, is just how I am able to witness in what I do that Father Capon's legacy, his life, is something that far from dying this 70 years after he passed away, really has continued to grow. And I'll direct your attention when you have a moment to read the testimony by Lieutenant Raymond Mike Dow, retired as a colonel, who was a fellow prisoner of war of Father Capon. And these men, when they came out of the prison camp in 1953, most of them did not want to talk about their own experiences in the camp. But all of those who knew Father Capon wanted to share his story because of how much that he meant to him. And they wanted to make sure, whether they were Catholic, whether they were Jewish, whether they were Christian, even those who didn't have a faith, that his legacy lived on. And I think we have a special opportunity to continue that legacy here in the state of Kansas. The fact that it took 60 years to award him the Medal of Honor, while a shame, also shows that his story has continued to grow. But as Representative Hill was mentioning, in 2021, with the return of his remains, I think tells a great story in and of itself. And I have this vivid image in my mind of his flag draped casket being processed by horse and caisson by units from actually a detachment from Arlington National Cemetery that's stationed down in San Antonio. Members of the 1st Cavalry Division from Fort Hood, Texas, who came up to act as pallbearers, color guard, firing duty, to pay him respects. As the city of Wichita, the cooperation, thousands of people lined up in the streets. National attention from news media shows that this is a story that really resonates, especially with us here as Kansans, but really with people across the country. People outside of the country as well. I think we've had over people from all 50 states and I think 30 different countries respond. We even had some visitors from Buenos Aires last fall who said that his example helped him take care of his wife in her battle with cancer. And so to see that his story continues to live on is a testimony to, his message of hope, courage, perseverance, love in the darkest of times. And finally, one more comment, if I may. A few weeks ago, we welcomed the curator of the National Medal of Honor Museum, which is set to open in Arlington, Texas, March of next year, 2025. And the chaplain, or the museum, thinks that Chaplain Capon's story is important enough to focus on, to feature in their museum when it opens. Now, there have only been 3,517 people who have been awarded this Medal of Honor. It's our nation's highest award for bravery, for gallantry in action, but not only that, for willingness to put one's life on the line for the sake of others. This museum has room for only 50 of those stories about. They think Chaplain Capon's is important enough to feature. But in our conversation, the curator shared that, they're building this national museum, but his biggest fear is that the recipients are neglected or forgotten in their own hometowns. And again, Representative Hill was saying how important he is to Polson, but I think we have a unique opportunity to make sure that his legacy lives on, not only in our hearts and our minds, but really, again, in our lives for people, for Kansans, for generations to come. And so I thank you all for your time, consideration of this bill, and stand for any questions. And I'll set this over here if anyone would like to take a look at it as well.
Questions? Thank you, Scott, for your testimony. This time we will hear from Senator Rick Wilburn. Thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. It's a pleasure and an honor to appear before this very important and distinguished committee. I'm here today to talk a little bit about, I and two of my colleagues co-sponsored this bill. Senator Capon, of course, we've heard a lot of astounding and inspirational stories. Senator Capon was born in Pilsen, Kansas, in Marion County, right in the heart of my 35th Senate District. The Senate committee heard also astounding stories about Father Capon and his service and his spiritual uplifting to every creed and color and religion in his service. The Senate committee passed it out unanimously. It passed the Senate 40-0. And I think everyone in the Senate perceived Father Capon to be well worthy of this recognition. The week of the Senate hearing, I received a press release, which is attached to my testimony, from ex-CI Director Mike Pompeo. He was, of course, in full support of this effort. Also attached to my testimony is a transcript from President Obama and when he awarded the Medal of Honor. I had the pleasure of working with the Marion County Commissioners and the Kansas Department of Transportation to enhance the access to the church in Pilsen, Kansas. And on May 30th, I attended the ceremony, as did Representative Hill, dedicating the Harrington Post Office, the Father Capon Post Office. So as you can see, there's been some work laid over the last several years. The momentum is building towards what we're working for here to achieve this memorial. The dedication at Harrington, I might add, was recommended by all 4 Kansas congressional delegations and signed by President Biden. And that is, shows the across all divides the importance of this effort. On 2021, as has been mentioned, the remains of Father Capon was returned to Kansas. I won't go into a lot of the details, but I want to say that Governor Kelly proclaimed September 29th as Father Capon Day. Her comments were tweeted along with the proclamation are significant. And I quote, Father Capon was known to care for all prisoners, regardless of their background or religion, and we are proud to honor his service and sacrifice for his country, unquote. Father Capon is the most decorated chaplain in U.S. history. His namesake adorns military establishments, memorials all around the globe. His presence is only growing with time, and hopefully this momentum will build to finish this memorial and hopefully his sainthood in the end. So I think all the visitors and all the elected officials in Kansas will enjoy seeing the memorial here in the Capitol as a reminder of his great service to our country and our state, and a proud Kansan. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Is there any questions? Thank you, Senator, for your testimony. Now, did we ever get the WebEx and back? We'll go on till we can find this man. Do we have any opponents? Do we have any opponents? We do have one neutral testimony, Master Sergeant Gene Bradley. Thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you, committee. Glad to speak in front of you today with neutral testimony on the memorial honoring Chaplain Emil Capon. We value every attempt to honor the Kansas veterans who have served their country, because Kansas has a rich military history, and Emil Capon's heroics add volumes to this heritage, and is deserving of tribute because of his heroic service to his faith and country during the Korean War. He currently still stands as the military's most decorated chaplain. Taken from, there have been so many stories shared, and there will be many more as this process continues forward. But taken from his Medal of Honor award, this is from the Obama transcript. Not only did Chaplain Capon's gallantry save the life of Sergeant Miller, who he pushed a Chinese soldier aside to save, but also his unparalleled courage and leadership inspired all those present. including those who might have otherwise fled in panic, to remain and fight until the enemy captured them. And Sergeant Miller was one of 9 men present at the Medal of Honor ceremony in 2013. And all 9 of them attribute to their survival to Chaplain Capon. His last words to his boys was, I'm going to where I always wanted to go, so when I get there, I'll pray for you. Until the very end, he maintained his faith. It's incredibly important to tell the stories of our veterans and our heroes throughout our country as we face an increasing challenge to recruit to the National Guard and the active duty component. It's beholden upon us who are serving now and those of us who are in positions to tell the story to share that knowledge of the great heroics and sacrifice that others have taken before them to inspire the next generation to pick up the mantle and carry it through to the next and the next after that. So with that, I thank you and I stand for any questions.
Any questions? Any questions? Thank you, sir. Did we ever get the WebEx man on?
Yes, can you hear me now?
And one more.
Hello?
He's
Hello?
online? Okay. Okay. Let's see, that would be Ray? Kbon,
Yes,
are
this
you
is me,
online?
Rick. Yes,
Okay.
I am.
Turn up the volume and you may give your testimony.
Thank you, Representative Ronald Ellis and members of the committee for allowing me to provide this written testimony of SB 431. I'm Raymond Emil Capon, the nephew of Chaplain Father Emil Capon, and I greatly appreciate this opportunity to discuss with you the life and the merits of my uncle. I never personally met my uncle. He died in that hellish prison camp in North Korea in 1951, and I was born in 1957. But I was very, very fortunate and blessed to have a grandmother who, with through tears most of the time in her eyes, would tell me the stories of Father Emil. Father Emil was a priest. He was a soldier, a chaplain, a hero, but more than anything else, he was a Kansas native through and through. And my grandmother, she would always talk of Emil's love of the land of Kansas. He would jump at any chance to work alongside his dad out in the fields on their meager farmstead. And if anybody knows what the land is like around Pilsen, Kansas, farming wasn't easy. It seemed to be more rocks than dirt. But he never backed away from any chores or difficult struggles. And as my grandmother would always say, he always saw them as blessings. But it was Father's love for the others that set him apart from everyone else. You know, even as a young boy in grade school, he would seek out and find the classmates that were struggling or that were always getting picked on. He would befriend the ones who always seemed to be alone and help them have a better day. But this trait only grew larger in him through his entire life. You know, I've been very, very blessed and had the greatest opportunity to get to know quite a few of the POWs that were in the camp with my uncle while they were still alive. And as a matter of fact, we're only down to 2 that are actually still with us that were in the camp. Mike Dow being one, and Paul Roach being the other. And I would even consider these 2 brothers are actually almost second fathers to me. But when you talk to any of those POWs that were in the prison camp with Father, you know, they would all say the same thing. He always took care of others' needs before he thought of himself. He would offer his own meager rations to his fellow POWs, even though he was starving himself. His self-sacrifice saved so many lives in that camp. And even to this day, with the 2 POWs that are still alive, whenever you talk to them about Father Emil, they all still get tears in their eyes. I truly believe that Chaplain Father Emil Capon's story, legacy, and life is and can be a great inspiration to anyone who hears it, and even more so for his home state of Kansas. In a time when there was so much division and mistrust in the world, Father would be a hope of light. He was about uniting people. He was about not casting judgment on people. He was about forgiving people. But more than anything else, he was about loving people. You know, if I had to sum up Father's life in a sentence or 2, I think the best way I could describe it would be how Captain Robert Burke, one of the POWs that was in the camp with Father, described him in Monsignor Tunney's book. And he said, "This is how I remember the finest man I ever knew, the most outstanding priest I've ever seen, the hero of heroes, and to put it simply, the most unforgettable character I ever met. That diamond in the rough that we would all be proud to call Dad, the man we respect and admire and cherish in our hearts, our beloved Father Capon." I would like to conclude by asking the committee to support this private effort to collect funds to memorialize my uncle and his great Kansan. The Kansan, the priest, the hero, and yes, as far as I'm concerned, the saint, who has finally come back home to his Kansas roots, to his Kansas soil. Thank you again for this opportunity. I appreciate it. Anybody may have any questions?
Thank you, Ray. Are there any questions? Any questions? Thank you, Ray, for your testimony. Appreciate it. This time we have one more person would like to speak. Please introduce yourself and tell us where you're from.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. I'm Pete Meitzner. I'm a Sedgwick County Commissioner in Wichita. And this has been very humbling to hear all these stories. And Representative Hill, nice to see you. And I've been to Pilsen a number of times. I feel a kindred spirit in that I went to Chaplain Capon Memorial High School. And Representative Thompson, thanks for your service as a chaplain. So, and Ray, if you're still on, I was honored to attend the Medal of Honor ceremony, my wife and I, in 2013. And you were right, there was 9 surviving prisoners that were in the front row. If you've ever been to the Pentagon, it's my first time ever, and it's very impressive. And the auditorium was an unbelievable setting and very humble ceremony. And the 9 survivors were honored to stand up, and tears were everywhere, and it was incredibly impressive. So, and we teased with Ray, if he's still on, because I went to Chaplain Capon. We called it Capon. There was Capon, and and Ray and his family said, "We don't care. Everybody just call him. Just call it whatever you want to call him, and whatever name you want to use." So that debate will go on forever about how's the original name said. So as a locally elected official at a county, once in a while you get the chance to vote in favor of something that's just an easy vote to make. And we appreciate retired Colonel David Dennis is Air Force retired. He's on our county commission. He wanted to come up and express his sincere appreciation. And the veterans, anyway, this is just a chance for you all to do what's easily the best thing for our state of Kansas and for the citizens of Pilsen and Wichita area. So thank you for letting me say a few words, and appreciate it very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else who would like to give testimony? Well, at this time, I'm going to close the hearing on Senate Bill 431. I have some announcements before we leave. Next meeting will be March 7th, Thursday. We'll have final action on these bills. And before we adjourn, Colonel Tony DeJesus, the Executive Director of the National Guard Association of Kansas, will give a briefing on the Kansas National Guard Hall of Fame here located, I do believe, in Topeka, Kansas. He'll be here on Thursday. So with no other comments, the meeting is adjourned.